Let's get one thing straight immediately. This wasn't some soft, feel-good return, and it definitely wasn't the cautious, scripted comeback that a lot of people were expecting. The moment Caitlin Clark stepped onto that hardwood for the Indiana Fever, the entire illusion collapsed. No media spin, no front office narratives, no internet drama could survive what actually unfolded in that gym. This was dominance, raw, unapologetic, and surgical. From the very first possession, Clark didn't ease in. She seized control like a player who never left, like a force that had been waiting, building, sharpening itself in silence. Every dribble had intent, every pass had precision, and every shot carried a message that echoed far beyond the practice facility walls. She wasn't testing her limits, she was obliterating them. The tempo? Relentless. The vision? Unreal. The confidence? Borderline terrifying. Defenders weren't reacting, they were surviving. Coaches weren't directing, they were watching. And executives? They weren't analyzing, they were sweating, because the reality unfolding in front of them didn't match the narrative they had been carefully and clumsily constructing. For days, the conversation had been polluted with speculation, questions about roles, control, hierarchy, but in a matter of minutes, Clark erased all of it without saying a word. She didn't need to. The basketball spoke, and it spoke loudly. She ran the offense like it was hardwired into her DNA, pushing the pace to a level that exposed every hesitation, every weakness, every doubt. Passes sliced through defenses like lasers, arriving before teammates even realized they were open. Shots from deep, absurd distances that most players wouldn't dare attempt, looked automatic. Almost disrespectful in their ease. And perhaps most importantly, there was zero hesitation. Not a flicker of doubt. Not a trace of caution. This wasn't a player returning from adversity, this was a player weaponizing it. Every movement screamed one thing: control. Total, undeniable control. The kind that doesn't ask for permission, doesn't wait for validation, and certainly doesn't bow to external expectations. And just like that, the so-called controversy vanished. The idea that she would be shifted, limited, or redefined. Gone. The fear that her role would be diluted? Erased. Because when the ball is in her hands, and it was in her hands constantly, there is no debate. There is no alternative. There is only reality, and that reality is simple. She is the engine, the architect, and the undeniable center of everything this team is about to become. What happened on that court wasn't just a practice, it was a declaration, a warning shot that didn't just echo through the building but across the entire league. And if anyone was still clinging to doubt, still holding on to the idea that this season would be anything less than a takeover, they got their answer in the most brutal way possible, by watching it unfold in real time. And here's where it gets even more dangerous. Because this wasn't a one-woman show operating in isolation. This was a system coming to life around her. A roster that suddenly looks less like a collection of players and more like a fully loaded weapon. The presence of Aaliyah Boston in the paint adds a level of stability and dominance that forces defenses into impossible decisions. While Kelsey Mitchell becomes exponentially more lethal when defenders are stretched beyond their limits trying to contain Clark's gravity. And then there's the defensive edge brought by Raven Johnson, a piece that was wildly misunderstood in the narrative chaos leading up to this moment. Instead of conflict, what actually emerged was balance. Instead of tension. Because now you're not just dealing with an elite playmaker, you're dealing with a fully supported ecosystem designed to maximize her impact. The spacing becomes wider, the options become deeper, and the punishment for defensive mistakes becomes immediate and brutal. And let's not ignore the psychological layer here, because it's just as critical as the physical performance. Clark didn't just show up and play well, she dismantled narratives, exposed overreactions, and flipped the entire conversation on its head without engaging in a single verbal exchange. That's power. That's control at a level most players never reach. It forces everyone, the coaches, executives, analysts, to adjust, to recalibrate, to confront the reality that whatever plans they thought they had must now revolve around her, not the other way around. And that's what makes this moment so pivotal. It's not just about one dominant practice, it's about what it represents moving forward. If this is the baseline, if this is what day one looks like, then the ceiling becomes something far more intimidating than anyone was prepared for. Because a fully healthy, fully locked-in Caitlin Clark isn't just a star, she's a system breaker. She bends defenses, warps strategies, and forces entire teams into uncomfortable, reactive positions. And when you combine that with a roster that finally complements her strengths instead of complicating them, you're looking at something that goes beyond excitement, you're looking at inevitability. The kind that builds slowly, game by game, until it becomes undeniable. So while the noise, the drama, and the speculation may have dominated headlines for a week, the truth has now taken center stage. And the truth is far more intense, far more compelling, and far more dangerous than anyone expected. Because this isn't just a comeback story, it's the beginning of something that has the potential to reshape the entire landscape of the league. What makes this situation even more explosive is that what we witnessed wasn't even close to a finished product. It was a glimpse, a warning, a raw preview of something that is still forming and still evolving into something far more dangerous. Because when a player like Caitlin Clark operates at that level this early, after everything she has endured physically and mentally, it doesn't just raise expectations, it completely shatters them. There's a difference between being great and being inevitable, and what unfolded on that court leaned heavily toward inevitability. Every possession felt like it was being engineered in real time by someone who sees the game 2, 3 steps ahead of everyone else. Defenders weren't just getting beat, they were getting exposed, pulled out of position, manipulated into making decisions they didn't even realize they were making until it was too late. And that's the terrifying part. This isn't just about skill, it's about control over the entire environment of the game. When Clark accelerates the tempo, the game speeds up. When she slows it down, everything tightens. She dictates rhythm like a conductor controlling an orchestra, except the consequences here are brutal. Miss one cue, lose one step, and the possession is already over. And the deeper you look into it, the more unsettling it becomes for opposing teams, because there's no simple adjustment. You can't just double her, she'll find the open player instantly. You can't sag off, she'll pull up from distances that break defensive schemes. You can't play her physically without risking foul trouble and momentum swings. It's a constant dilemma with no clean solution, and that's before factoring in how quickly she processes everything happening around her. The narrative that tried to paint her as someone who needed to adjust, to scale back, to somehow fit into a predefined system now looks almost absurd in hindsight. Because what system could possibly elevate what she already brings? What structure could improve something that is already operating at such an elite, instinctive level? The answer is simple, it can't. The only logical move is to build around it, to unleash it, to let it dictate everything else. And that realization is exactly what makes this moment feel like a turning point, because once that shift happens internally, once the organization fully embraces that reality, the ceiling doesn't just rise, it disappears. And then you layer in the emotional and psychological edge that's clearly fueling all of this, and the picture becomes even more intense. This isn't just about proving she's back, this feels like a response, a reaction to every doubt, every critique, every narrative that questioned her durability, her role, her long-term dominance. Players at this level don't forget that kind of noise, they store it, refine it, and eventually unleash it in moments like this. You could see it in the pace, in the aggression, in the refusal to take a possession off. There was a sharpness to everything she did, like every action had purpose beyond the play itself. And when that kind of mentality spreads through a roster, it changes everything. Suddenly, teammates aren't just participating, they're feeding off it, matching the intensity, elevating their own games in response. That's how momentum becomes culture, and culture becomes identity. The Indiana Fever aren't just trying to improve, they're transforming,